D3 Peralt, Las Vegas, CBS Sports Radio, 1140, a radio.com station. The most in-depth coverage of the Silver and Black as they set their sights on Las Vegas for 2020. Live from the CBS Sports Radio 1140 studios, it's Silver and Black today. Join the conversation by calling 702-889-5978. Now, here's Scott Gulbranson and Matt Gutierrez.
Good Sunday morning. Hopefully you set your clock back. It is 8 a.m. That means it's time for Silver and Black today. Could this be rock bottom, Raider Nation? Ooh. Could the debacle that was the Raiders trouncing on Thursday Night Football be as low as the Silver and Black can go? Are there even choppier waters ahead for this band of underachievers and scallywags? Welcome back.
Yeah, they wear red.
Welcome back to Las Vegas's only All Raiders talk show, coming to you live from the Dollar Loan Center don'tbebroke.com studios at CBS Sports Radio 1140. This is Silver and Black today, heading into week 9 of the NFL season without a lot of hope if you're a Raiders fan, but we move forward as the future is the focus and the current is a temporary misery as the way I look at it. Hi, I'm Scott Branson, your host, and I am joined as always by my co-host and partner in crime, Matt Gutierrez. How you doing, Matt?
I feel like Garth whenever you say that. Remember Wayne's World? As always.
Excellent.
Do you remember that scene where he's like, what am I, just your little sidekick here, as always? Every time you say as always, that's what I feel like.
No, sidekick.
My new name's Garth.
And sidekick, you remind me of one of our favorite movies, which is The Incredibles. Anyway, we meet each week here to talk Raiders football, but we want you to be the third host. Sound off Las Vegas and Raider Nation. Call now at 702-889-5978, 702-889-5978, and tell us what you think. Don't be voluble. Voluble. Actually, you should be voluble. That's talkative, I should say. Call us 702-889-5978. Reminder, we are streaming today's show worldwide on the most amazing app you'll ever download, and that is the radio.com app. So make sure you do that. You can listen to not only our station, you listen to all of the great Entercom stations here in Las Vegas, including KLUC, KXNT, you name it. We are also available live on YouTube. So if you want to tune in, go check out our YouTube channel, and also Facebook, and on the CBS Sports Radio 1140 Twitter handle. You can watch us on Periscope there live, and even on Twitch. If you're a gamer and you're one of those guys who's been up all night, drinking energy drinks and you can't figure it out, you can watch us there as well. Also, make sure that you check out our website, silverandblacktoday.com. We are a news website dedicated to everything Raiders football with a Las Vegas twist. Okay, let's get on to what our lineup is today. In our first hour, our weekly feature, My Cousin Vinny with Vinny Bonsignori of the Athletic Los Angeles, kicks off segment number 2. Vinny will tell us how the front office folks and executives from around the league are reacting to what's happening in Oakland. And will also give us the latest on the Raiders possibly playing in San Diego. Oh, we've talked about that here before. Hearing that it has been squashed, Matt, by the NFL and Commissioner Roger Goodell.
Yeah, I mean, if that's true, it was only a 1-year fix anyways. It's just Biden time at this point to get to Vegas. Wherever they play next season, it's going to be a 1-year rental, whether it's a city, whether it's a stadium, whatever it is. It's just get us out of here and get to Vegas. Right?
Well, we'll ask him because that rumor is flying around, and it was from some San Diego media, so we'll talk to him about that. Also in the first hour, former pro sports front office executive Doug Verb joins us. Doug has served in various capacities in pro sports during his long career, and he'll give us his insight into what Gruden, Mark Davis, and the other Raiders organization folks might be thinking as they plot the course for 2020 and for Las Vegas during this ugly, ugly rebuild stage. Also in the first hour, we'll ask the question, is the Raiders' 2018 defense, Matt, the worst in franchise history?
It might be the worst in NFL history.
We'll dive into the numbers and take your calls on that as well. Then in the second hour, we fire up the Attorney Michael Troiano newsmaker line and welcome back a great friend of the show, former 49ers, Browns, Raiders, and Patriots front office executive Michael Lombardi, who will lay out for us just what Gruden must do to take charge and right the ship. He will not mince his words or hold back, so make sure you catch that at the top of hour number 2. Then we switch gears and talk Las Vegas Stadium. Yes, some good news as we visit with Mick Akers of the Las Vegas Sun. He'll give us details on the big deal between the Raiders and Caesars Entertainment that was announced this week. And we'll ask him for an update on the stadium naming rights, if there is one, as well. Mick's always great, so make sure you catch that. Then we'll head for the home stretch with Matt's Audible, where Matt picks a topic at large. We'll discuss, debate, argue, whatever happens when Matt goes under center and calls the audible. We'll close out the show with attorney Michael Troiano, who will be in the studio to update us on the latest NFL police blotter. I figured, Matt, misery loves company. So the one thing we could say is there's been no Raiders arrested this year.
Yeah.
Knock on wood.
Let's be honest. They've been pretty good about that for the last several seasons. I don't think they get enough credit for it because they have that mystique. The Raiders are always in trouble, right?
Yes.
Going all the way back to the 70s. But, I mean, they've kept their noses clean for the most part for a while now. Absolutely.
And so, but Michael will come in, since he's a criminal defense attorney, he'll come in and make us feel better about the state of the Raiders because, again, no one's been arrested, and that's a positive. There you have it, Raider Nation. You're up to date. We've set topics on the table. Now it's time for you to chime in. Call us here on Silver and Black today on CBS Sports Radio 1140 at 702-889-5978. Okay, now what we want to do is we want to start the show with some positive news, right? Everything's been so negative. That's all you're hearing from national media, Bay Area media, even the Las Vegas media, unless you're a crappy UNLV team, and then you get glowing coverage.
Man,
that's a different subject for a different show. You can carry that over to Sports Adrenaline next Saturday from 8 to 10. But this week in Las Vegas, the Raiders, again, keep diving deep into the community and doing some really great stuff. And our own David Stepanian, our correspondent, was out at a great charity event, again, from the Raiders, and he did this great news package. We're going to play it for you now. Here's a segment on the Raiders in the community.
If there's one positive takeaway from the Raiders in 2018, it's their continued contributions to helping build a better community. This time, the Raiders teamed up with the Ronald Mcdonald House Charity of Las Vegas to build a Raiders-themed playroom and a Raider mobile to provide transportation to and from the hospital for families. The head of RMHC in Vegas, Allison McCarthy, was thrilled to hear the Raiders wanted to help the cause.
The Ronald McDonald House doesn't function without these types of donations and this type of support from the community. So when you say, what would we do without it? Well, we wouldn't be able to provide the level of service that we provide to these families, many of whom come through our door without even enough to pay the suggested nightly donation of $10. So they would be left without a place to stay. They wouldn't be close to their family members in the hospital. So this is not a nicety. This is a necessity that the Raiders are helping us provide for families who are going through just some very, very difficult days.
The Raiders were also joined by Vegas native and retired LA Raider Chris McElmore for a check presentation to the tune of $5,000 to pay for lunch for inpatients and outpatients.
Over 600 lunches per week is what we're going to be delivering to the families that are in the hospitals and the kids are getting the treatment. And we're just, the families are going through an emotional time at this moment. So something to kind of release some of the financial stress and some of the emotional stress that goes on, not only for the locals, but the families that's traveling. And we just want to help, And that's what we're doing. And that check will go a long way in helping those families.
And what's nice about the Lunches on Us program is it also helps local families. Any family member, sibling, parent, grandparent sitting at the bedside of their child's hospital bed gets a free, healthy, fresh-made lunch made that day, and that is what these dollars are going to support.
The goal of the Ronald McDonald House Charities is to provide a supportive home away from home for families and children who are receiving inpatient or outpatient medical treatment at local hospitals. You can find out more about their mission at rmhc.org. For Silver and Black.
All right, welcome back. David Stepanian reporting there. So, David, jump on the microphone there. David is our engineer today.
Yeah. How weird is it to see me behind the desk as opposed to next to you guys?
I actually like it because it covers your face. And I don't have to look at it.
Well, listeners don't have to deal with that.
No, for most of us, unless they're watching us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, or where else are we? Periscope.
So
we're everywhere. We're everywhere. But David, awesome job on that.
Thank you.
Talk about, though, when my son, so I have to say this, my son turns 11 today, and my son has celiac disease. And when he was 2 years old, he was deathly sick. He was basically starving to death from the inside. And he was in Children's Hospital in San Diego. And we went there, and they offered, Ronald McDonald House in San Diego actually offered us the ability to stay there and offered us meals and all this stuff. It was amazing. And we were around a bunch of kids who had, much worse things than my son. They had cancer. There were kids that were unfortunately in the last stages of cancer and were going to pass away. Amazing charity. But talk about what the Raiders are doing here in town specifically that you talked about in the story.
Yeah, no, and that's a great story, Scott, because that's exactly how the Ronald McDonald House Charities work. Is they need those donations, and they sort of live off of stuff like the Raiders pulling in and pulling together and helping out. Because if it wasn't for organizations like the Raiders or anyone else who is a donor to RMHC, then stuff like this wouldn't happen. So really, it's more like a team effort, and the fact that the Raiders, sort of put their best foot forward and were able to come together with the RMHC of Las Vegas. And it's interesting because whenever I cover these stories, I sort of forget about the Oakland Raiders and how this season is going because
I think Oakland wants to forget about it.
And I think of more of like the grand scheme of things and just how great they are for the community. So it's really this isn't just a football team. They're more than that.
No, and David, thank you for that, man. That was good stuff.
Thank you.
Really great, as always. So now, Matt, we have a member of Raider Nation. One of the things we tried to start with some good news. Hopefully, our caller Anthony, who's on the phone now, is going to join on. Hopefully, that helped him out a little bit. But Anthony, what's going on, man? What do you have to say about the current state of the Raiders?
How you doing? Hey, man, I'm pretty positive. Gruden went to the media and he says, we're not doing a rebuild. I think he just needs to go to the locker room and be like, hey, check it out. We're doing a rebuild, you know what I mean? I'm getting draft picks. I'm building for the future. I'm not trying to win here. So y'all need to play for yourselves because if you go out there and stink it up, who's going to pick you up? Who's going to want you? You know what I mean? So you got to go out there and you got to ball out for yourselves, get yours, and let me do me. And P.J. Hall, Arden Key, Millhurst, Cole Miller, they're all safe because they were Gruden's his first wave. You know what I mean? Derek Carr, maybe not. We don't know. But hey, I'm still all in. I know what Gruden's trying to do. I just think he went about doing it the wrong way. But when we come to Vegas, man, we're going to be stacked. And he might turn it around. I still have faith, but that's just me out here. So,
well, that's good, Anthony. No, man, I appreciate the call because I think you tend to hear everybody go really, really negative. And I'm not saying, and Matt, you jump in here too, I'm not saying that you shouldn't be upset and disappointed with how things have gone because I think everybody is. At the same time, I think there are people who are looking at the long-term health of the franchise and have a trust in Jon Gruden that he can get it done. We don't know if he will. We just don't. I mean, that's not known until he does it, right, Matt?
Yeah, it's impossible to judge Jon Gruden on the field right now based on results because this isn't an NFL team. I mean, let's be honest. This is a bunch of guys who really couldn't start for most teams in the league. If you're on a quality team and you have these guys on your roster, those guys are down on the depth chart. They're not getting starts. That's what he's dealing with right now. He's not putting a product out on the field that can compete at a legit NFL level, and that's why you're seeing these constant blowouts. I mean, they just went into San Francisco, and you can say guys quit and whatever, this and that, but they went into San Francisco against a guy who had never taken an NFL snap before, a third-string quarterback, and they were lit up. That's the level of talent that you're looking at on this team right now. So to judge Jon Gruden based on on-field performance it's very short-sighted because you have to stop and look at what he's doing outside of actual game management. He's getting rid of guys that probably don't want to be there. He's getting rid of guys that are at the end of contracts, guys that they don't want to overpay. We all know about the Mac situation as much as we all hate it. It's just a fact or a point of they don't want to pay Mac. They didn't want to pay Cooper. You look at the return they got, they have to nail those.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to. They have to nail the draft damn near 100%. I mean, let's be honest. They've got to get every single one of these first-round picks over the next 2 years right, or it's all for naught because then you're right back in rebuild mode. No,
and of course, yesterday, Matt, we saw another roster move, right? Yep. We saw Bruce Irvin, not a surprise, was released. Bruce Irvin, not only was he a disappointment on the field overall, not being really consistent, but also I think a bigger deal was when they did trade Khalil Mack, Matt, they really turned, and Jon Gruden said it publicly. He said, look, we need Bruce Irvin to step up and be a leader. He did not.
No, and we'll get into Irvin here in a little bit deeper as we go on in the show, but that's a move that I think you could see coming as close as just a few weeks ago. You knew he was on his way out.
Yeah, and they tried to trade him, of course, but there were no takers, as you can imagine, because nobody wanted him. So a good move there. Are there going to be a lot of other roster moves? We'll see. We're going to step aside. When we come back, we will talk more. We'll talk with Doug Verb and Vinny Bonsignori. You're listening to CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m.
Troiano. The only way to take Silver and Black today with you is with the radio.com app. Download it today and search CBS Sports Radio 1140 in Las Vegas and listen to us anytime, anywhere.
Welcome back. Silver and Black today in a Raider Nation that's still dealing with a rough season. All right, we are back, and we are talking Raider football on CBS Sports Radio 1140 AM. And this segment every week, our second segment of hour number one, we go out on the Attorney Michael Troiano newsmaker line, and we welcome in Vinny Bonsignore, of course, NFL writer for The Athletic Los Angeles. Vinny, how's your Sunday morning going?
Well, I'm in the Big Easy, so it can't be that bad, right?
Yeah, man.
Hey, so that means you're just coming in from a night out of daiquiri-filled regret? No.
20 years ago, maybe. But I watched LSU, Alabama, from the hotel, even though there were just packs and packs of people, in New Orleans, downtown New Orleans, out and about watching that game. If they didn't go to Baton Rouge, about an hour away, they were here at bars watching it. Not a good night for the locals, but in terms of the score, but they got after it, no doubt about it.
As you get older, Scott, you have to, you get away from Bourbon Street. You go down to Frenchman Street and you go check out the jazz clubs and hang out a little more. You slow it down a little bit.
Yeah.
You start to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
absolutely.
I do the same thing. I love Lafitte's Blacksmith, my favorite bar. It's down at the very end of the street. It's the oldest bar in the United States.
Nice.
And it's very mellow. Sit on the patio, have a nice little cigar. All right, Vinny, let's get back to Raiders. Enough of New Orleans.
What? No, come on, man. I like the New Orleans stuff.
I need to lose weight. I need to lose weight, but please have a po' boy for me. All right, let's talk about Raiders now. So, Vinny, you have really just impeccable sources and contacts throughout the NFL. What are you hearing? What's the view of NFL executives and front office people you talk to just in general about what's happening in Oakland, especially after what happened on Thursday night?
Well, I mean, it's a process, and you talk to people in the NFL, and they understand that. And when you're, the Raiders made some hard decisions to start this season. It started obviously with Khalil Mack. I think that kind of set somewhat of a stage for what was gonna follow. And they had a hard decision to make. Are you going to pay him, a defensive player, $25 million, or basically more than what Aaron Donald was going to make, knowing how much that was going to disrupt your salary cap, not just this year, but moving forward, which is the key to the whole thing. The Rams are going to be feeling that contract for many years to come, and the Raiders would have as well. But the difference is, as we've talked about, the Rams have a right now intact, ready to go Super Bowl contending roster around Aaron Donald. The Raiders simply didn't. So they had to make a hard decision there, and ultimately what they decided is, we've gotten as far as we can with this particular group. We need to go further. We're not going to get there if we continue to just sort of pay a guy like Khalil Mack $25 million and try to build around him. Let's strip it down and start over, basically. And there's people in the NFL who understand that. They have to make hard decisions like that themselves. Maybe not this drastic, because it sort of all came to a head at once for the Raiders, but they understand that. And so I'm not saying there's sympathy, but there's definitely empathy. They understand what they're going through, and they also understand that this is a transient league. Time moves on. It's not going to be like this forever for the Raiders, and people in the NFL understand that. So not to say that who will get the last laugh or anything like that, but there will be a time in the future, hopefully for the Raiders sooner rather than later, where they are getting the last laugh, because a lot of people are taking shots at them outside of the NFL. Inside the NFL, they understand what they're doing.
Vinny, how fair is the on-field criticism of Jon Gruden right now? National media is crushing him, saying that he's in over his head. The game has passed him by, things like that. Because of the way that he stripped down the team, he's basically coaching a JV squad out there. I mean, these aren't viable starters for the most part on this roster, and they're basically saying that he can't coach anymore. Well,
I mean, everyone has an opinion. We all know that. And sometimes you got to consider the source. I remember a lot of the same people, and not to disparage anybody, any colleagues that I have, or anyone that wants to chime in, but a lot of people said that they would never make it to Las Vegas, too, or get a stadium deal done or secure their future. So a lot of people that were saying that are saying this now, and they're making snap judgments on something that is going to play out. That's why he has a 10-year contract. I think intuitively everyone understood this might take a little while, and we're going to give you the security you need to make the decisions that you feel need to be made without the threat of, hey, we're going to pull the plug on you. You get 10 years and $100 million. Right. That pretty much tells you that the Raiders are saying, it's in your hands. We trust you. We know that it might take a while, but you have the time that you need.
Yeah, and Vinny, I think that one of the other things too is we hear and listen. We all part of the media. And we understand how you build stories and you talk about things. And with all the airtime that's available nowadays as well, you have to fill time, and so you debate things at end. But at the same time, when you talk to folks, when you see the media talk about, well, Gruden can't get it done on the field, he's not a coach, he can't relate to younger players, do you hear that, too, from anybody in the NFL as far as not the rebuild, but just the actual coaching and leadership on the field?
No, not with the sources that I talk to and that I deal with, and not to say that this is the same situation, but again, many of the same people or people like them said Jared Goff didn't pass the eyeball test. He wasn't going to be a good quarterback after 7 games of his rookie year. So again, I'm not trying to be an apologist or try to paint a rosy picture. It's not rosy right now. It's thorny and hard and difficult right now, and it looks really bleak. But to say that this is how it's always going to be, and to say that Jon Gruden can't coach because he's stripped down a team and is basically working right now with a stripped-down team, is presumptuous and hasty. And now, if we're having the same conversation 4 years down the road, then these people were right, and Jon Gruden couldn't get it done. And I'm sure the Raiders, if that ever came to it, would make that decision. He would probably make the decision, hey, I can't get this done, I'm out of here. But we're far from that point. We're at the beginning stages of a complete rebuild. So I think it's a bit hasty to start making decisions like that. But again, we've seen that. We've seen people call Jared Goff a bust after 7 games. So just consider that and think about that when people are saying what they're saying right now about the Raiders. Yeah,
again, we're talking to Vinny Bonsignori from the Athletic Los Angeles about the state of the Raiders. Now, Vinny, I contend, all right, there's just the way things are today and the way social media and everything feeds itself, negativity just seems to rise to the top, unfortunately. We see it with politics. We see it with sports now as well. And I contend this whole focus on Jon Gruden, I mean, yes, he's a big personality and all that, but at the same time, because he got so much money, I think there's some play there. People are so quick to bring up that point. Look, he makes $100 million. Well, so, if you were turning around a Fortune 500 company and you were making $100 million and your first quarter, so your first 3 months running the company, you were still losing money, would people say to fire you? My answer is no. But do we not? I mean, do you think there's just a disconnect there, and that maybe the money piece of it just kind of gets people off what the main subject should be?
I mean, it certainly clouds the issue, or affects how people look at things. But even more than that, I believe we live in just such a snap judgment, short-sighted type of society right now, and that's across the board. That we say things that 5 years down the road we might look back and say, well, I was wrong on that one. Nobody's going to look back necessarily and tweet out, hey, I was wrong 5 years from now. I may say, hey, look, you know what? I thought he was going to get it done. He didn't get it done. Time to cut bait and move on from Jon Gruden. Maybe that will happen, but I'm not going to make the decision right now. I've seen too many situations that took a while. Look at the Philadelphia 76ers. It took a while, and they took a bunch of punches, and they were the laughing stock, and they were the punching bag, and a guy got fired over it. But he was on the right path, and I think that the Raiders are taking a similar approach right now. And the easy thing right now is to kick him. That's just the easy thing, and really, honestly, the lazy thing, without maybe saying, hey, let's look at the big picture here, because that's exactly what the Raiders are doing. It's a hard choice that they made to go in full rebuild, but they truly believe from the top of the organization right on down that it's the right approach. And 5 years from now, we'll figure out whether or not they were correct. But this is the decision that they're making, and to me, they deserve the time to show whether or not that it was the right decision or not.
Vinny, before we get you out of here, news coming out now that San Diego deal looks like it's going to be squashed. Goodell is saying we don't want the Raiders there. They're not going to be playing there in 2019. All about protecting Spanos. What are you hearing from people around the league in relation to the Raiders possibly playing at Qualcomm next year?
Well, the people that I talked to haven't heard that specifically. To my knowledge, Roger Goodell hasn't said that publicly or to anybody that at least that I talked to. Does it make a little bit of sense? Yeah, it makes sense. If you're thinking about it from the league standpoint and Dean Spanos' standpoint. But my question is it to protect him in Los Angeles, or is it to protect them in case something happens down the road where they decide to go back? So I don't know where the protection, what part of Dean Spanos, whether it's Los Angeles or his interest in San Diego at a later date, that they're trying to protect. But one thing that I can say is that, you know, if you're thinking of protecting people, it's almost silly that this has come out at this point in time from the league's perspective, because you're really kind of cutting the legs off of the Raiders in terms of them and their leverage trying to get something done in the Bay Area for one more season, which is really where they want to be for one more year. But it has to be a fair deal, you know, in their eyes. So does this help or hinder them and their ability to get something done in Oakland? We'll have to see.
Vinny, as always, thanks for joining us again. Silver and Black today. Vinny Bonsignori, check him out on The Athletic LA. We'll be back. We have Doug Verb in studio joining us. Back after this, Silver and Black today. CBS Sports Radio, 1140.
The law.
This is Mark Bedane, president of the Raiders. You're listening to Silver and Black Today.
All right, and we are back. Welcome back to Silver and Black Today. In this segment, we're going to talk a little bit about the Raiders rebuild from the perspective of someone who's had to build and run professional sports franchises, and that is Doug Verb, who also owns and runs Action Sports, a sports marketing company as well as doing some consulting. And also we'll talk a little bit about the big deal with the Jets this week in the NFL around gaming. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But we bring in now Doug Verb. Doug, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing well, guys. It's early. Did I get the time change right?
I was going to say,
you got an extra hour today. You got an extra hour of sleep, right?
Wow. Seems like a lifetime.
Yeah, you got that. They say it's an extra hour, but let me tell you, when I woke up this morning, it felt like I needed a couple more. But Doug, so you have run sports franchises, right? So you've been in the GM position, president's position. You've started leagues. Someone like the Raiders, where right now you're doing a purposeful tear down and rebuild. For those of us on the outside of media or as fans, it's difficult to kind of grasp it. But from the inside, how hard is it for the organization to stay the path despite the negativity and the PR that's going against you on the outside?
Well, in general, there's a couple things in play here. First of all, and I think with the Raiders, there was a lot of feeling that they were going to be a playoff team. So you're not going into it like the way the Sixers did the process. Mm-hmm. You're not going into it and saying, here's what we're going to do. This is a disappointment, and this is a shift, a big shift real fast that they've had to do. So you have that whole level of disappointment for the fans, disappointment for the staff, and disappointment for the sponsors, of course. Layer on top of that, they're moving. So this was going to be the last gasp, let's get into the Super Bowl. Let's win the Super Bowl for Oakland. Not happening.
I think you talk about the move. That's maybe the biggest key here that people are missing is that while it's disappointing for the group of fans that are actually in Oakland, the Bay Area fans, the rest of Raider Nation, although you hate to see them lose, should be pretty excited about this because you're seeing Gruden come in, tear everything down so that he can build something great. You have this new stadium to look forward to, new city to look forward to, and unless you physically live in the Bay Area, you just got to be excited for the next chapter, right?
Well, yeah.
To a degree, I guess.
Yeah.
Matt should be in PR, right?
Right.
Yeah, there you go. You got to spin it.
Good idea, and that is actually, at the end of the day, the biggest aspect of it, the PR, the personal relationships that you're growing. This is so different. I don't know that this has happened before, really. And again, we're in week 9. 3, 4, 5 weeks ago, we're going to the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. So, and the truth is, and this is an interesting question, there still are more Raiders fans in the Bay Area than there are here. Mm-hmm. Has to be, I would think. So that whole change, that whole flip, it's happened so fast. You have the new coach, you have the 10 years, the $100 million, all of those things. You get rid of your stars. It goes against everything. However, are they doing the right thing? I think they are. I think that's all that they could do. Now, how does it affect everybody? Well, it's going to be the age-old question, what's going to happen when they get here? Does it make it more difficult to come into this market, which is still a question mark for the NFL until it happens? So that's what you're putting up with. As far as your staff, no one sat down like in Philadelphia and said, here's what we're doing. For the next 4 years, we're going to just be building. So let's get as many people in, get them in early. This is different here. It's a totally different process.
And Doug, for that process, because we think of it as media and fans, especially fans, they see it. They see the team as the coach, the players, maybe the GM, and that's it. But you have secretaries, you have assistants, you have marketing folks, all those people in the organization, when you were running teams and had to make difficult changes, that's part of the job you have to do, right? You have to go in, reassure them that you have a path and that you have a plan. And that's something that Jon Gruden, let's face it, as sort of the quote-unquote CEO now of the Raiders, has to do, correct?
Well, yeah, he's the CEO on the football side, and it bleeds over to going and talking to key sponsors and all of that. But Mark Bedane is the one who has to, bring his staff along. And again, how many of the staff are coming here? How many of them have said, this is it, I'm out of here in 2 years, I'll do something else. So you don't know. It's a very ticklish, high wire type of thing. It's not tough. I mean, you can do it. You sit down and you talk to people, and that's what I believe, everything I've heard, that's what Mark does. But it's communication. But you're right. There's a whole staff, everybody, the equipment people, the people in the office, they're all attached to what happens on the field.
Yeah.
No matter what.
Yeah.
Which is very interesting. Something happened here which is fascinating to me as someone who looks at the business. The Golden Knights, typically, the marketing people, promotion people, all of the side people, the PR people, if the team has problems, if they're disappointing, they're going to get hammered. They might get fired, all kinds of things like that. They get too much of the backlash, never enough of the credit.
Right.
Okay. In this situation with the Golden Knights, most of those people came in after everything was set into motion. And they're getting all the accolades. And it's wonderful. They're great people. I know them. They deserve all of this. They wouldn't have gotten it in other places. So it's a different, typical Vegas. Everything is different here.
It's funny you talk about that because we, on Sports Adrenaline, 2 years ago, when the Knights were first getting going with all their promotions and everything they had going on, we were very critical about the way that they weren't out there enough. You didn't see enough signage out there. You didn't see enough promotions out there. It didn't feel like they were really hyping themselves enough, knowing the Raiders were coming, that the NFL was going to come, this juggernaut was going to come, they were going to trump them, and it felt like they were going to get lost in the shuffle. And then the win started, and everything just snowballed, and it turned into, man, they're doing such a great job when winning kind of trumps all, doesn't it? And that's it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how good or bad your promotion is if the team, that on-field production is as great as the Knights were last season.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. And I think that was a matter of timing. I think a lot of the people from Curry Booboats down weren't really in place early on, and things weren't done and all. And it worked out. And it wouldn't have worked out, if the team was what we thought they were going to be, it wouldn't have been to that level. But I think it still would have been very successful because, A, they were first in the market, and B, the people that did come in, Curry and all of his people, great professionals, experienced, know what they're doing. Well, so, yeah, it would work out.
Great insight, Doug, from someone who's been there on kind of the mood and how the Raiders need to sell both outside and inside. Now, let's switch gears in the couple minutes we have left with you. The Jets signed a big deal this past week with MGM on gaming. Now, we've seen hockey do it. We've seen the NBA do it. Talk a little bit about that and what you think we're going to see in the way of gaming promotions and sponsorship with the NFL teams, including the Raiders.
Well, you just said the Jets. That's the beginning. What we're going to see, mo money, mo money, mo money. I mean, there's no doubt about it. What was that phrase that you first heard when the rules came? The Supreme Court struck everything down.
Integrity.
The integrity fees.
Integrity.
You haven't been hearing that anymore.
No, sir.
Why? Because let me just run some of these down. The Jets, the Ravens have done something with the Horseshoe Casino in Baltimore. The Cowboys, the WinStar World Place. And the Devils and the Sixers, both owned by the same guy, Josh Harris, who happens to be a minority investor in Caesars Entertainment. Mm-hmm. So he has deals with, he has deals with Caesars. He has the Devils have a gambling lounge with William Hill.
With William Hill, yeah.
And they're able to do it. So this is just going to continue on and on and on. Meanwhile, the NFL forbids their teams to have advertising of sports betting sites with the exception of fantasy sports. Remember when that...
Because they own a piece of it.
Well, of course. But it went away.
Right.
Remember, it went away and now it came back.
And Doug, we have about 20 seconds left. Do you think that's all, that piece of it's going to change too very quickly with the league now? Because now, I mean, you have teams making deals. Why would the NFL prohibit you from having ads?
That's what I'm saying. They still forbid you, but they're already out there. The Jets had everything going on last Sunday. So, yeah, it's going to change. And every state, every team is going to be involved. So the answer to all your questions, money.
All right. Doug Verb, thank you for coming to Action Sports. You can check him out, and he's always part of the show. We'll hope to have you on again, of course. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks.
All
Thanks,
right,
guys.
We're going to step aside. We'll be back here, Silver and Black Today. So CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m. Welcome back, Silver and Black today. Want to again thank Doug Verb for coming in and schooling us on sports business as he always does, and gaming. Really interesting times. We're going to talk more about it when Mick Akers comes on with us here shortly from the Las Vegas Sun.
We need a full hour with Doug, man. I mean,
I know.
The amount of information that he was throwing at us just during the break alone. It's this whole thing is going to blow up, and it's about time. That stigma is finally gone, I think. The gambling aspect, and we know the NFL stance on it. They can say publicly what they want to say, but they've had no problem with fantasy sports because they're getting money from it. They have no problem going to Wembley where you have bookies on site, and then we can't even talk about Vegas, and now suddenly everything has changed.
No, that's exactly true, and I think it is all going to change. Want to also thank one of our sponsors, of course, that is Michael Westra Allstate Insurance. Make sure you call Micah. He's a community-driven guy. If you need help, it doesn't matter if it's home, life, auto, 702-435-4211 is the number there. Make sure you give Michael a call, and we appreciate his support of the Silver and Black today. Okay, Matt, now we're going to go into a subject that should scare anybody. We're just a few days after Halloween, which can be a scary time. And if you look at the Raiders' defense, that's what we're going to devote here some time. This defense, I honestly, the other night watching them against the 49ers, Matt, I don't know. Remember, I grew up in San Diego. I had to watch some really bad Charger teams as a kid. I don't know that I've seen a defense that lacks more desire or talent, period.
They don't do anything well. They don't do anything well. There is not a single facet of the game that you can point out that this defense does well. They can't rush the passer. They don't get off blocks. Their linebackers are consistently lost in coverage. They don't tackle well. The defensive backs can't cover one-on-one. They get lost in zone coverage. I mean, you saw Reggie Nelson come down on the first the touchdown to Pierre Garçon to start the game. He comes down and bites on the play action, which that happens with play actions for.
Sure.
You get guys to bite, get guys to suck up a little bit towards the line of scrimmage, and you try to beat them over the top. The thing that killed me about it is, first of all, Reggie Nelson he's been in Paul Guenther's system for a long time. He knows the system. He's one of the vets on this team. He's a captain on this team. He gets caught in the play action, and he doesn't even bother to get depth. He sees them roll out. He knows what's going on, doesn't bother to get any depth, just stands there 4 yards from the line of scrimmage and lets Pierre Garçon run free behind him. There's nothing that this defense does well. When that happens, you get guys that have never played football before in their life at the NFL level, third string on the depth chart, coming out looking like Joe Montana.
No, that's right. And the Raiders overall, from a statistical standpoint, and statistics can sometimes be a funny thing, are not worst in the league, but I want to just focus. This blew me away after the game, and you're looking at the stats after watching really what was a horror show for Oakland fans and for the team. The 49ers had 7 sacks against the Raiders on Thursday night, Matt. Mm-hmm. And how many sacks do the Raiders have for the entire season?
They have 7, and 3 of them just left.
And 3 of them just left.
Bruce Irvin took his 3 sacks and went home.
Right. And so to me, it just goes to show you that you can argue, and I know people want to, that, hey, look, you traded away our best pass rusher in Khalil Mack. Nobody likes that, including me. So I'm not gonna say that that's not true, because it is. You did trade away your best pass rusher, okay? But the defense being this bad with even without Khalil Mack shows you that they had no depth to begin with.
But hold on, guys. Gruden's getting phone calls left and right from the best guys in the league. They want to come play for the Raiders, right? 2019, right? 2019. He's getting phone calls. His phone's getting blown up by some of the best guys in the league wanting to play for the Raiders.
Well,
that's actual post-game interview quotes.
Had Mack not been traded, would they have more sacks as a team? Of course, because Khalil Mack is that
makes
good.
Sacks. Yeah, right.
Would they have more wins? I would give them one more win this season than what they have, and that would have been the Denver game, in my opinion, because I think you do enough in a 1-point loss to maybe stop that final drive or keep the ball a little longer, something to those lines where they probably could have won that game. Maybe Khalil Mack was worth 1 win. Other than that, this defense is too horrible for one guy to make a difference. They have so many holes to plug on this field that it's just what are they going to do with this?
Well,
point?
Here's the thing: is to win in the NFL, you have to have a good offensive line and a good defensive line. That's where it starts, and they have neither. I think Maurice Hurst is going to be fine. P.J. Hall, I think the jury's still out. Okay, they have no help this year, so it's hard to evaluate those young guys fully unless they have a full multitude of folks on the line and on the edge because they have nobody on the edge. Arden Key has not been anything.
Really disappointed in Arden Key. And again, I mean, that's a product of him not having any help either. I mean, he was never going to be a Khalil Mack or somebody like that, but he could be a contributor from that side. But when you can double anybody you want on the line, when you can take away anybody on that line, because really the only other guy that can create pressure is Mo Hurst, then you can double him and shut him down all you want. P.J. Hall looks like a guy that came from a small school right now. He doesn't look like a guy that can play at this level yet. There are flashes. He has talent, but can he sustain? We don't know.
No, and that's the thing, too. We want to ask you guys, 702-889-5978 is the number. Give us a call. Tell us what you think of the Raider defense. I think, to me, Matt, the bigger issue, we know they don't have the talent, right? So that's going to take a couple years to even get to be competent. At the same time, to me, what bothered me most about Thursday, I'm not saying everybody quit because I don't think everybody did quit, Matt, but I do think there were guys who quit, and you can't just release everybody. But if I'm the Raiders and I can pick up or I can play younger guys and get rid of veterans, I would do it immediately because if you quit, that shows you're not a professional.
Yeah, I think it's hard to say guys quit. There may be some of that out there. Maybe you're not giving max effort. Maybe, you come off the ball on the line of scrimmage and you get blocked up right away and you just don't really put forth enough effort to even make it interesting as far as getting to the quarterback or getting off your block and making that tackle. I can see some of that happening. To say the team quit that's tough to say. These guys are out there with pride. They're playing for a paycheck. They know what they have to do.
I think there were a couple guys
on the field, but
I think there were a couple guys who weren't playing.
Well,
with
I think
pride.
one of them just got released.
Well, that's my point.
We
there's
know,
a couple
we know
others.
that, and he said that 2-3 weeks ago. We talked about that.
Yeah, we did.
He had checked out a while ago. He might have checked out when Khalil Mack was traded. Honestly, I think a lot of guys did. Yeah. I think they went, man, if they're going to get rid of a guy like that, how safe are we? What are we playing for at this point? But that's why you're seeing Gruden get rid of guys, not pay the big money for guys that he knows aren't going to be part of the long-term solution. It's unfortunate for this season.
Right. It stinks.
If he hits on the draft picks, it'll be fine going forward, but it's a process, man. You got to have some patience here.
But, Matt, I'll tell you, I think that it also, times like this are really good for a team, believe it or not, because you see who has the desire. Derek Carr said it, right?
Yeah.
You see who wants to be there. Well, I'll tell you this. We want to be here with you talking Raider football no matter how bad it may be at current time. We're going to step aside.
Man, it's bad.
And when we come back at the top of the hour, we're going to talk to Michael Lombardi, former Raiders player personnel and GM of the Browns. You're listening to Silver and Black today on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m. in Las Vegas.
Chapter, CBS Sports Radio, 1140 AM.
The most in-depth coverage of the Silver and Black as they set their sights on Las Vegas for 2020. Live from the CBS Sports Radio 1140 studios, it's Silver and Black Today. Join the conversation by calling 702-889-5978. Now, here's Scott Gulbranson and Matt Gutierrez.
Welcome back to Silver and Black Today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140, and we're happy to welcome back Michael Lombardi. Michael's been an executive in the front offices of the 49ers, Browns, Eagles, and Raiders, of course. From 2014 to 16, he was also an assistant to the coaching staff with Bill Belichick and the Patriots. And now we can add to that, he's a current best-selling author of Gridiron Genius, a master class in winning championships and building dynasties in the NFL. A great book. I highly recommend that, especially with the holidays coming up. Michael, thanks for joining us again here on Silver and Black Today.
Thanks, Scott. I appreciate being there.
All right. So listen, Michael, there's no other way to say it. It's dark days in Raider Nation. The team is coming off one of their worst games in recent memory, even some say even in franchise history, and they're looking for answers. Clearly, they don't have all the talent they need, and now perhaps there's some issues with the coaching staff. From your perspective, and you wrote a great column in The Athletic as well this week that I recommend everybody go out and read, and of course we'll put up on our Twitter handle here so people can do it. And you really talk about what's happening in Oakland, especially when it comes to Jon Gruden. But looking at what's going on from a high level, how do you kind of give us an overview of what you think's going on there?
Well, I think what I try to write about is where it's going next. I mean, you can belabor and be angry about how they played against San Francisco on Thursday night. And certainly, there's a lot of room for discontent there. But I think you got to look forward because Jon obviously has got a long-term commitment. I think this whole notion that what Jon makes is really getting out of hand and ridiculous because if you're running a Fortune 500 company, if you're running a company that's $2 billion, let's say, which the Raiders are probably valued at, making $10 million a year isn't exactly robbing the bank, okay? So you're really not overpaid at that. I think you think you're overpaid because you're a coach, but he's running the team and taking that aspect of running the team. What I wrote about in The Athletic was I think he has to take the broader approach. He has to take the CEO approach, step back from being the offensive coordinator, step back from coaching the quarterback, and try to figure out where this team is now, motivate this team, understand the coaches, understand the players, and spend the next 8 weeks really getting involved in that area.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You talk about the focus on how much he's making and the length of his contract. I've noticed, and maybe because we're Vegas-based, you have, I think, a really interesting dynamic happening with the media, Michael, and that is you have the national media, which is very down on the Raiders, I think mostly because of how they've played, so from a record perspective, although you have a lot of the talking heads talking about the money and Gruden, how he's lost it, and he doesn't have the ability to do it, and he can't build a championship team. Secondarily, you have a Bay Area meeting, and with all due respect to them, I understand where they're at. The team is leaving. And for some of those people who cover the team, so might their jobs. But I don't remember in recent times seeing someone who was so beloved in the media now really taking just brutal hits day after day, multiple times a day.
Well, I think, we all know the media is fickle and it's all, what have you done for me lately? And so I think what Jon has to do is, not worry about it and just move on and make decisions. Because, look, if you're making everybody happy, no one's happy. And so, that's the reality, and he's got to try to just make himself happy in the franchise. And I think if he draws his attention away from just calling the offensive game and focuses more on what he has to do with the franchise there, and I think that's going to be the critical component.
Well, and you, of course, just like in your book, Gridiron Genius, you talk a lot about leadership. I mean, leadership transcends football. It's about any organization that you lead. Having led a football organization and several like you have, knowing the ups and downs that happen, and sometimes the lows are very low, be the doctor here and diagnose from the outside at least, besides the lack of talent and what's happened there, what's wrong there, and is it really all going to be on his shoulders because he is, as you call him, the CEO of that team now?
Yeah, it is going to be on his shoulders because ultimately he wanted the situation to where he was, obviously he wasn't coming back until he had full control. So I think you got to break the game down in this way. I think they've got to fix the offensive line. It's tough to play two rookie tackles and think you're going to survive and be able to pass the football. I think they've got to redistribute some of their wealth in the offensive line. They've got to get the line better. I mean, they've got to get the offensive line better. They've got to increase their skill level production. And, of course, Carr's got to play better. But defensively, they need more speed. I mean, they definitely need more speed. And I think Jon has to reevaluate his whole approach. Not go older, go younger, try to have a mix. You can't be the oldest team in the NFL, be the worst team. You got to be somewhere you got to have some balance. And I think that's really important. And that's what I think he needs to do. I think he has to take a step back. He's in a different role than he was 10 years ago. I think he's got to transition himself. That was my call in the article. I think it's time to stop belaboring the issue as John Lawson has me. I think he now has to understand that he's in a different role. And that role requires him to act and behave in a different manner. And it's not about designing the game plans. Certainly he's a great offensive coach. But until he gets his team fixed, his impact on the offense is going to be great.
Again, we're joined now by Michael Lombardi, of course, longtime NFL front office executive and now best-selling author of the book Gridiron Genius. Now, Michael, we saw in the 49er game, really, after a game where they lost to the Colts at home, and you saw some improvement, for example, on the offensive line. Of course, then they go in against the 49ers, they get hurt again, and the defense against San Francisco was probably, I mean, I watch a ton of games like you do. It was one of the worst performances I've seen in a long, long time. And in the heat of the moment, the sideline can be an emotional place. We saw Gruden twice confront defensive coordinator Paul Gunther on the sideline. Are we reading too much into that? Is that just in the heat of the moment and things are going bad, so people just get emotional?
I think that's often the case. People get emotional. People get, certainly they get involved. And I think that's really when I saw that, I felt like at that moment, he needs to have more involvement in the offense, and he needs to have more involvement in the defense, and he needs to show the team he's involved. And I think instead of asking Gunther, he should know what's actually happening. And I think that's really what I saw on the television. And I think, to me, it's his job to understand everything that's going on and then evaluate it from his own eyes. And you look, he's the leader, and this isn't a committee meeting. Nobody's ever dedicated a monument to a committee. He's got to decide and how he handles it based on what his information is, not based on what other people are telling him.
Now, Michael, outside of the team and the organization, you just talked about how he's got to communicate and show his team that he's involved. Does Jon Gruden owe anyone else outside of owner Mark Davis an explanation on what his plan is and what they're doing?
Well, I think he should sell the plan. I think he's the voice of the franchise. I think that's what he should do. And I think and he has to stand in front of the team and say, look, here's the vision of the organization. Here's where we're going. And I think he's got to talk about it to the people of the organization. He's got to motivate the people within the organization, not just the players. That was my call to arms. I mean, instead of spending time with the quarterback, instead of spending time with the offense, he needs to spend time with the organization. When Bill Walsh took over the 49ers, he didn't walk in and say, we're going to win a championship. He went over his 17 points, a standard of excellence, which is in my book. He coached that every single day to everybody in the organization. I think that's what Jon has to do as well.
Well, and you said in your column too that and you emphasized that he learned something from this game, and you've talked about that a little bit here about how he needs to be more involved. The question is, and I see some folks on the national stage asking this question specifically, and this really comes down to, I think the crux of the matter is, can he do that? Will he do that? And how long will it go on before we see whether or not he is?
I think I think that's the call. I think, to me, I think, when you lose as badly as you lost, you have to evaluate everybody. It isn't just because you don't have enough talent. There's other things going on, and I think that's what he has to spend time looking at. And I think that's to me what I saw, and I think he's going to have to see the same thing. Now, take a step away. He's had a weekend to look at it, look back, and how does he use his time wisely? What does he do to maximize what he can bring to the table and his expertise? And then he can pass it on to the football team. I think that's most critical.
Right, and watching the Raiders the other night, Michael, and seeing some of these players, there's a lot of fans and folks who say, well, boy, some of these guys just quit. When teams are going bad like this, like you said, it's up to the person leading the organization, in this case, Jon Gruden, to get folks bought in and motivated no matter what the record is. But having been in that position yourself, too, when things are not going well, how often and how do you handle if you see a guy who's just not giving it his all?
Well, I think you move on. One thing about when you're bad, you can't tolerate bad players who don't do what you want them to do. So you just move on to the next one. And I think the other thing what people don't realize is when things go bad, you've got to spend time with the coaches and the staff because they're no different than the players. They want to give up too. They want to they need some motivation as well. And I think that's going to be critical. That's why I think he has to redistribute his spending time instead of just working with the offense. He's got to work with everybody.
Now, when you look ahead to Michael, the media too talking a lot about how this team is now flush with draft picks, and draft picks really don't matter unless you execute on them, correct? So with the Raiders now, you talked about the need for some consistency on that offensive line, which is sorely needed now as well. When you look at what they have to do going into 2019 and 20, because it's not just a one-year fix, how do you balance as a GM? How do you balance looking at, well, geez, I have so many needs on offense and I have so many needs on defense? Does it get to the point where you just emphasize going in and you pick your guys, or is there a different formula you use?
No, I think the formula is pretty much the same. You build the offensive and defensive lines. That wins football games. That's always won football games. That's won football games in the 40s. It's won it in the 60s. It's won it in the 80s. It's won it in 2000s. It's going to win it in 2020. You build the defensive line. If you can get blue chip players in both offensive and defensive lines, you're going to win a lot of games. If you have a quarterback, you're going to win titles. And so that's ultimately where it starts. Bill Walsh never worried about his wide receivers until the rest of the team was fixed. But he focused on the offensive and the defensive line. That's what Jon has to do. That's going to be hard for Jon because he's going to want to draft a receiver, a playmaker, somebody who can make it easy for his offense. But he's got to make it easy for his organization, and it starts with defensive line.
All right, Michael, as always, thank you so much. Make sure you catch him, too. Tell people about your show on Sundays, too, over on VSiN.
Yeah, VSiN, the VSiN Network, Fubo TV. You can catch us there on Sirius 204. We cover it's called Betting Across America. We cover college from 10 o'clock Eastern until 12 o'clock. And then on Sundays, we're from 10 o'clock until 1 o'clock. And it's basically covering every single game on the board and breaking it down for the gambler, breaking it down for the bettor, breaking it down for the fan.
All right. And again, Michael Lombardi, author of the best-selling book, Gridiron Genius. Make sure you pick that up. We will link it both on the website, in our social handles, longtime NFL executive. Read him on The Athletic. And as you heard, Saturdays, Sundays on VSiN. Always a pleasure, Michael. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Michael A. Troiano. Help us talk the Silver and Black. Call us at 702-889-5978. Here's Matt Gutierrez and your host, Scott Gulbranson, on CBS Sports Radio 1140 AM.
Welcome back, Raider Nation. We roll and continue in hour number 2. I want to thank again Michael Lombardi for joining us. Some interesting tidbits there. But he's speaking the truth. I mean, it's nice to see it from the outside perspective, somebody who says, look, he's got to step up. Gruden's got to step up. He's got to be the CEO. He's got to think of things differently. He's not just a coach anymore.
But I wonder if is that the case? Is he not doing that? I mean, let's be honest. We have this is not an overnight fix. This is going to be a process, and really, it's a 2-year process heading into Las Vegas. So it's still TBD, right?
It is still TBD. What is not to be determined is the deal that was struck this week between the Raiders and Caesars Entertainment, a 15-year marketing agreement and sponsorship agreement, a founding partner of the new Las Vegas Stadium. And to talk about that, we bring in now one of our favorite guys here in the local media in Las Vegas, and that, of course, is Mick Akers of the Las Vegas Sun, who covered this issue, and it covers all of the Raiders business issues, as always, for the Sun. How you doing this morning, Mick?
Hey, pretty good. How you guys doing?
Doing good, buddy. All right, so let's talk about this. You know, we've been waiting for a while for those of us who cover the Raiders and the stadium and what's happening there, waiting for stuff to happen, right? Because, yes, the stadium's not going to open until 2020, but these deals tend to start to trickle in a few years in advance. What is it about the Caesars deal that is really a big get and start for the Raiders as it comes to this corporate sponsorships for the stadium?
Yeah, obviously it's bringing in one of the larger casino companies in town, Caesars. The whole deal is pretty cool. They get their own branded entrance, VIP suite on the 50-yard line. They're kind of going to cater to their high rollers, so anyone that's in their total rewards kind of group that's, and they're spending a lot of money, they're going to wine and dine them here at the stadium. So I think it's going to be the first amenity to come, but obviously it's going to show, hey, you're going to come to Vegas. You're going to spend some money at this casino. Obviously, they're going to take care of you, and it's going to transfer over to the football side here, and you're going to have some VIP experience that you can't get anywhere else, pretty much.
Hey, Matt Gutierrez here. Is this kind of like a foot in the door type thing for Caesars, where maybe because obviously the other big player out here is MGM, and they've got T-Mobile Arena, and they're so invested on that side of it. Is this going to be a way for Caesars to kind of get in front of them and push them off to the side a little bit?
Well, you can look at it that way, but there's still plenty of time. There's going to be several more of these to come with the founding partners here. So I think that you might even see MGM jump in on this. You just never know. Obviously, it's going to be quite larger than the T-Mobile Arena. They have a half ownership share in that, which obviously is a great thing. But I wouldn't imagine that they would pass up an opportunity to put their name up on the stadium as well. So. I would say it's obviously getting their foot in the door, but I wouldn't, count MGM out from, joining in this partnership, especially with all the talk with them, with the partners, their hotels across the street, like Mandalay Bay, Luxor, and all that stuff. So, it just would make sense at some point that they might strike up some kind of a partnership because with the parking situation and all that, and MGM, hasn't been too keen with them throwing out the, hey, you can park over here. So, maybe that's a way, to kind of quiet that issue down, have that partnership strike up, and maybe, this helps it out just a little bit.
Well, and Mick, we know, too, that, as you just alluded to, and there's even some other issues, I think, that float between, for those of us who are kind of always around what's going on between MGM and the Raiders, and so it has to do with parking, it has to do with some other things as well. For Caesars, though, talk about, you cover gaming as well and the business overall in the Valley. Caesars coming out of bankruptcy, the troubles that they've had, and then now, of course, leadership change this week. How big of a deal is this for them as far as overall nationally, too, from the point of you're starting to see sports entities? You saw the Jets deal earlier with the MGM this week, and all of these different gaming deals that are now being struck by individual teams in different leagues. How big of a deal is this for Caesars, too, to finally have an opportunity to put some good news about how they're going to be involved in the sports world?
Yeah, they've been pretty busy over the last couple of weeks. They also struck up some deals with the 76ers and NBA and the Flyers and the NHL. They're going to have a sports betting lounge in the Prudential Center there, so that was like a pretty big story there. As far, They kind of emerged from the bankruptcy. They're building this new $375 million convention center behind the league. So, and then you mentioned the Persora, he's heading out, so they're going to have a new leadership. But obviously, they have their issues. But it looks like they're kind of trending upward right now at this point. And just getting their foot in the door with football, I think ahead of time in Vegas especially is a great thing for them. And like I said, you've seen these deals striking up in the last couple, like say 3 or 4 weeks. So I think it's just going to keep popping up everywhere. There's any kind of casinos near any kind of these stadiums, arenas. It's just kind of like the next step, the evolution of sports betting and it's professional sports. It's going to be like a common thing. I think, say 2 or 3 years down the line.
Mick, from a fan's perspective, they all love the name, right? What's the name of the stadium going to be? Everybody wants to talk about that. The Raiders have only played in a place called the Coliseum, no matter where they seem to go. Caesars jumping in there. Coliseum seems like it's a no-brainer, but Caesars isn't the naming rights. They didn't buy the naming rights. So have you heard anything as far as who's going to jump on board? What big corporation's name is going to be slapped on the side of that building? Anything like that?
There's nothing specific, but I've been, getting the word from people involved with all the stadium deals and all that, and talks are ongoing right now with several companies just, gauging interest and all that. And they mentioned it kind of runs the gamut, gaming companies and everything. So, obviously with Vegas, and we have the gaming capital of the world, it would be kind of odd for it to not be one of the large gaming companies that, in town. So I think once it's said and done, it's going to be a gaming company. But, they're going to listen to all offers and all that. So I would expect maybe that coming out, I would say sometime next year. I don't think they're going to be rushing on that because obviously they want to get the best deal and fill out all the offers, and it's not going to happen overnight. But, yeah, it's a work in progress. But, as far as specifics about who's involved with those, it's been pretty tight-lipped. Anyone I talk to would just tell me that they are having those talks, but they won't tell me, exactly who. They'll just say, I ask what kind of, industry they're from. And they just say it just runs, through pretty much everything in town that's big, any of those industries. So, they won't. They're not going to give it to me right away. But I'll keep picking at them. I can get something out of them here before they strike that deal up.
Let's just hope it's not Sam Boyd, right? Let's give it something. Let's give it a different name if we're going to stick with the local gaming ties here.
Oh my goodness! Well, and it's funny because if not for the Supreme Court decision, I don't know that they could even be talking to gaming companies about naming rights. So very fascinating. Again, we're talking to Mick Akers from the Las Vegas Sun about the Raiders' deal with Caesars Entertainment this year. Now, Mick, when it comes to a deal like this, so they are the first announced stadium founding partner advertiser. Let's call it what it is. How important is this for the Raiders? What's the next progression? Does this now open? Does it now set the bar from a cost perspective? Now, we don't have details on what this cost, right? But is this a big deal for the Raiders because now they've set the kind of market for what it requires?
Yeah, obviously getting the first one in there is a big deal because now they have a price, and now anyone else must have come in after they're going to feed that. Hey, this is what Caesars paid. Look at this kind of attention they got when they did it. So it's going to make this even, super attractive anyway, but this just makes it a little bit more attractive saying, hey, look at how much attention this has gotten. So usually you look at stadiums and they'll have around a dozen or so of these founding partnership deals. So obviously this is the first one. I would say it'll be somewhere around that, that market around 10 to 15. So, over the next, few years or so, you're going to see a bunch of these start popping up, but I'm not sure it's going to be all at once. So it's just, it's going to trickle in here and there.
Mick, we were off the air a little while ago talking about just the value of this franchise and how much it's gone up just since this deal, or this move was announced coming to Vegas. How much potential do you see in the growth of the overall value of this franchise with all of these huge gaming companies coming on board eventually?
Yeah, that's going to help. Just first when they, striking that deal, getting that stadium with, the public money involved, that helps it right away. It's almost doubled since they announced even that they were talking about coming to Vegas. So it's showing its power right there. And then when you start bringing these big companies in and, Las Vegas, the attractiveness of that, just obviously they keep mentioning that we're going to be, 60-40 mix from locals and tourists filling up the stadium. So there we go, setting up some packages with all that. So it's going to bring in a whole bunch of different aspects besides NFL and football. They're always going to be working with maybe some tourism companies, setting up package deals with some hotels and all that. I would imagine that's something that would be pretty common sense to do, in my opinion. So just bringing in everything, it's not just football, everything around the city and all that, it's going to help the value of the team go up, obviously, because it's just who doesn't want to come to Vegas? And it's the NFL, the largest sport in America. So it's just like hand in hand. It's worked pretty good, I think.
All right. Well, Mick, thanks for joining us today. I appreciate the time.
And thanks for having me on, guys. Always appreciate it.
All right. Follow Mick Akers at Mick Akers, Akers, on Twitter, and also read him on the Las Vegas Sun. All right. When we come back, we're going to be joined by Attorney Michael Troiano. We're going to go through the NFL police blotter to make ourselves feel better. Whoop, whoop. Since there are no Raiders on it. You're listening to CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m.
Troiano.
Hey, this is Rodney Hudson. You're listening to Silver and Black today.
No questioning Rodney Hudson's heart. That guy's perfect. Number 1 center for pass rush in the league. Number 2 overall.
A lot of good it's doing.
Yeah, I know, but at least you don't have to worry about. At least you don't have to worry about that position, right?
Yeah.
All right, so now we are going to switch gears and make Raider Nation feel better about itself because no Raiders have been arrested. Knock on wood. All right, bring in the music. Okay, he's not a judge. He's not a judge yet. A little loud there, David. A little loud. That's right. Fingers a little hot. Not a judge yet, but he is an attorney. He's a criminal defense attorney, a sponsor of this program as well. It is Attorney Michael Troiano. Michael, welcome.
Thanks for having me again, guys.
All right. That was all right, David. Thank you, man.
Yeah, of course. No problem. Yeah, no, I felt like he deserved a grand entrance. That's
yes,
all.
he got it. All right. So, Michael, we have you on all the time. You are our in-house legal expert. We had a couple police blotter pieces that we wanted to talk, and that's why we're having you on. Number 1, a place that the Raiders want to forget about, which is London, although San Francisco is much worse than London. But the Jaguars were there 2 weeks ago to play, and a group of their players went out, decided to have some fun with alcohol and other things, who knows what else, and decided to not pay for it. And they were arrested. What happened, and what impact is it for them since they don't live in the UK?
Well, the details of it, what exactly happened, haven't been
of course.
released. So you could look at it two ways. Entitled athletes bringing bottles in the club, thinking that they're just going to get it for free because they're special and they're American football players. Or it was maybe just a simple misunderstanding. They knew that they were obviously famous, rich football players, didn't think that they'd have to haggle over a $64,000 bill, which if we were to sit down and have a couple of cocktails, there'd be a lot of crying going on when that bill came on. But for that group of individuals, it's kind of ridiculous that there was a dispute. So who knows? Maybe they did hoodwink them and they talked as if it was going to be free cocktails all night. Whatever happened, either way, they were due the bill. And instead of just manning up and saying, all right, here's the money, let's get out of here, we got a game the next day, they decided to dispute it. A little pushing, shoving, and the 4 players with the Jags ended up in custody.
It's strange because Matt and I went out to Starbucks last week and it was $64,000, right?
Is that what you call it, Starbucks?
Very nice. But okay, so not unusual, right? Somebody gets a bill and says, "Oh crap, we spent too much and we thought it was free," and because you're right, the entitlement piece of it. Now the law is different in the UK. So for folks here in the States, Michael, we know the presumption of innocence until proven guilty, right? This is what you deal with every single day. How does it work in the UK? So you get arrested for violating the law. How is the system different?
Well, I mean, it's not as different as you would think because that's how American law was created. Before we had our own court system and what we call there's 2 types of things. There's what we call statutes, which, you pass a bill, your legislature comes in and says, hey, we're going to make A, B, and C illegal, and it's on the books for everyone to see. And then us lawyers get involved, and we muck it all up, and then we fight it, and then that's how cases go to the appeals court, Nevada Supreme Court, United States Supreme Court. And from there, it's called case law, where judges will interpret the law based upon the facts of your case, and it could expand on it or it could cut it down somewhat. And that's essentially how our American court system was started from England, because obviously we were occupied by the British for some time in the beginning. As far as this specific incident's concerned, I think it just came down to the money. They put him in custody, probably under the influence at that time, right? It was a dispute over bottles of alcohol or what they perceived to be free. And I'm sure Jaguars management or ownership got involved and said, let's just pay this tab and call it what it is.
Yeah.
And then the complaint was dropped.
So that's done. They've squashed it. They resolved the situation. There's not going to be any carryover as far as the legal side of it goes.
No, according to the reports, unfortunately for them, it just came down to money. Because I deal with that a lot. I'll have a lot of clients in some sort of disputes, whether it is financial or maybe some other aspect of it. And they're like, well, I'll just pay it. And say, great, that's all well and good, and that could potentially help resolve this. But you've been charged. So they were brought into custody, but not formally charged with what we call a criminal complaint. So it was as easy as getting some big wigs in to talk together, pay the bill, okay, complaints dropped, get out of there. So I don't think there's going to be any further repercussions by the players or the organization regarding this incident.
Okay, so now let's talk about an incident that happened here in the colonies. And that's with a Giants Kyle Lauletta, who decided to drive, I guess, allegedly You're an attorney, so I have to. Allegedly, right?
Allegedly
drove while under the influence of something and was passed out in his car, had some issues. What happened with him, and what sort of uphill battle is he facing?
Well, my understanding is that there was a traffic violation the day before, so I don't know if he's just running late to practice or he's just a nut job, to be quite honest with you, because you're an NFL star and you're running late to practice and not listening to police. So that he received a minor traffic violation, and then the next day it was a very similar issue on his way to practice on a Tuesday morning, and apparently the traffic officer directed him to go in one certain direction. He refused to, so that's a crime in and of itself. And then apparently when he was doing some sort of illegal U-turn, he almost clipped the officer. That's pretty problematic, trust me.
That's not a good thing.
And then a little bit down the road, another officer was able to catch up with him, and still at this point, he's very likely just going to receive a traffic ticket. And then he resisted arrest and was placed into custody, actually taken in and charged. So I'm not really sure what's going on with him. Is either mental health problems, alcohol, drug abuse, or he's just had a really, really bad week.
Yeah, it sounds like he did have a bad week. Let me ask you this, Michael. Because when we talk about all these issues with athletes, NFL players in this case, in your experience, and I don't want to get you in trouble, I know you won't get disbarred for talking about it, but do people like this, I mean, do NFL players, are they going to get a little bit of preferential treatment when they get into the legal system? Does it kind of depend on what the offense is? Or, I mean, what's your kind of view of that?
I could only really speak for Nevada. Obviously, we're going to learn pretty soon when the Raiders come here to Vegas and get a team and see how that goes. But as far as celebrity status, football players, things like that, I've certainly seen preferential treatment. There's cases in which I've seen like some celebrities, these wannabe or real, I guess these days, Instagram celebrities that have 2 million followers, but they make just unheard of amounts of money just off of that, have some serious cases just get wiped away. And then I've seen other cases where it was a very famous celebrity and it was somewhat of a minor issue, but they made it seem much more serious because they didn't want, the state didn't want to be accused of giving preferential treatment.
What does that come down to? Is that more about the credibility of the person? Is it more about money being thrown at the situation? How do you determine which one of these quote-unquote celebrities is going to kind of skirt the issue?
I think a lot of it has to do with their prior criminal history or lack thereof. If you go a couple years back, remember Paris Hilton was arrested on the Strip for a very small amount of cocaine. And in Nevada, any drug other than marijuana, even the tiniest little quarter of a gram, is a felony. It's just any possession of it. So possession of cocaine, for example, anything under 4 grams is a felony. It's possession of controlled substance. Anything above 4 grams is trafficking, which sounds crazy, and that's a topic for another day. But just that simple possession of a controlled substance between 0 and 4 grams of cocaine is a felony in of itself. And quite honestly, very likely, if you have 0 prior criminal history, no honest attorney would guarantee a result, but I would be pretty confident to say that misdemeanor is going to be likely, or best case scenario is going to have the case completely dropped, even if it is a very legitimate and solid case, because it's one of those crimes where the district attorney's office has discretion based upon your criminal history or lack thereof. Where Paris, I mean, I believe it was eventually dropped, but she had to go up and do some sort of drug program and got up into district court, which is a higher level court. And I don't know the merits of their case. I know she had a fabulous attorney, he's one of the best. So I'm sure that it got worked out appropriately. But at the same time, if Joe Schmo off the street was to come in my office and have that same sort of offense, not that I would do anything different. Again, her attorney's amazing, but I don't think it would have to go through that many hoops just because that person's a nobody compared to.
And doesn't a lot of it? I mean, it's a luck of the draw to who the judge is. I mean, there's judges, like people in general, are different. Some are going to grandstand. Some are very humble. Some are different. Some are going to want to make an example out of you, even if you're just a Joe Schmo. And so isn't that a little bit too, it depends who you get?
It depends who you get. Obviously, judges are human beings, and they have different interpretations of the law, different policies in their court, how they look at certain things. But a lot of times when clients ask that, like, well, what about the judge? What about the judge? It's certainly a factor, but a lot of it's who the prosecutor is. and your prior dealings with them as a defense attorney, your relationship with them. And we don't need to be friendly and go out for cocktails, but at the same time, when you have a history with somebody, you cut through a lot of the BS. And it doesn't mean that either side's going to get exactly what they want, but it's a working relationship, and that is a very big part of my job is those professional relationships. And they're adversaries, so again, not every situation you're going out and getting drinks after your case, but at the same time, there has to be some level of mutual respect, because it doesn't matter what judge you're in front of if you can't have any sort of rapport with the prosecutor and get to a point where you're trying to come to some sort of reasonable solution for your client.
Well, let me take the whole reputation thing to the NFL now. You've got the Raiders, who are always looked at as being kind of problematic team, but you've got a whole bunch of guys that haven't created any issue for several years now.
Mm-hmm.
How much of that is based on history of a team versus individual, when guys tend to get in trouble? Oh, well, he's a Raider, so we're just going to throw the book at him, kind of thing.
Reputation.
It's certainly it's certainly something that will be a unique set of circumstances for defense attorneys when eventually the inevitability happens. One of our Vegas Raiders gets in trouble and gets arrested. But I think that's more media sense, just trying to make something bigger than it is. So it'll sound really bad, but quite frankly, again, back to the conversations with the prosecutors or dealing with the judge, if you got some 21, 22-year-old kid who gets a DUI, nobody's hurt, he has no prior criminal history whatsoever, I highly doubt that that subject is going to be coming up as, well, he's a Raider. I mean, if he was a Patriot, I might work with you here.
I guarantee you media perspective would go in that direction. Though.
Absolutely. Well, the Patriots, they like to commit crimes on a much higher level.
Yeah. Listen,
absolutely.
That is Attorney Michael Troiano. Make sure you visit TroianoVegasLaw.com if you have any criminal defense needs. Doesn't matter if it's minor or major. He's there for you. A proud sponsor, and we appreciate your sponsorship of Silver and Black today. Thank you, Michael.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good football Sunday.
All right. We will close out the show when we come back here on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m.
The only way to take Silver and Black today with you is with the radio.com app. Download it today and search CBS Sports Radio 1140 in Las Vegas and listen to us anytime, anywhere.
All right, welcome back to the closing segment of the Silver and Black today on a week where the Raiders lost 2 games in 1 week. Woo.
No,
yeah,
man,
we haven't
not only
mentioned that yet.
We talked about it a little while ago. I can't remember where this tweet came from.
Yeah.
Somebody threw out the stat. The NFL record is 6 games, consecutive double-digit losses. 6 games. The Raiders are at 4.
That's the record? 6?
6. The Raiders are at 4.
Oh, it's going to happen.
They had 2 inside of 4
record.
days. They got the Chargers coming up. You know that's a loss. They still play the Chiefs twice.
Chiefs
you kidding
twice.
me? The only way they're going to break this is if they play well in Arizona. Because you know they're going to lose double digits next week against the Chargers. Then they go to Arizona. Everybody talks about that's their one potential win. I don't even see that happening. But they may be able to make it a game.
But
if they don't cover double digits to Arizona, that's a wrap, man.
Well, yeah,
there's no way.
And here's the thing: you guys have to play for the guys who want to be Raiders long term. Those are the guys. I don't expect the whole team to play great the rest of the season, of course, because they're a terrible team. But what I do expect is to see some of those young guys who are hungry step up and show that they want to be part of the team moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
The guys that don't, they're gone.
Yeah,
It's pretty simple.
Who's left? Who's left on this team?
11
from
guys.
2016.
11.
And how many of those 11? We'll say 10 because I'm pretty confident Derek Carr will still be here, even though I think drops a little. My confidence level drops a little every week.
Yeah.
Who's going to be in Vegas? How many of these guys are going to be in Vegas?
Good question. I don't know. I think
Hurst, Key,
Colton Miller, Rodney Hudson.
Pretty much it.
Rodney Hudson.
Yeah, I don't know, man.
Maybe 5 guys I could name off the top. Reminder, after our show here on CBS Sports Radio, Falcons and the Redskins will get it on for football. And after that, you have the Chargers and the Seahawks. And then, starting at 4 o'clock on the radio.com app, the PG, with myself and Tony Cardasco, the post-game show. We'll go through all the action. We'll also have some sound from the Raiders as well. We'll play some of that, actually, too, here when Matt does his Audible. Also, we'll do that, as I said, first half on radio.com, so from 4 to 5, 5 to 6, it'll be over the air on CBS Sports Radio 1140, so join us for the PG as well. All right, Matt, Audible, you're under center. You blow on your hands, get your hands under the center.
So this actually goes back to the very first segment of the day with David. It's great that we started with that. And it's the community work, not just the Raiders, the NFL in general, right? What they do when they come into a city, because there are so many people, and I know you see it all the time, Scott, and you get it from everywhere, and we see it with media. A lot of the media trolls in the city like to do it. We don't even want the Raiders here. We don't want the Raiders to come here. They're never going to be the Golden Knights, right? How often do you see that garbage?
Oh, yeah.
Who cares if they're ever going to be the Golden Knights? You're getting an NFL franchise in a city that has been dying to get professional sports for how long now? Talk about how much positivity comes with not the on-field product, because the on-field product is going to be what it's going to be. Sometimes you have good seasons. Sometimes you have bad seasons. If you're the Raiders, you only have bad seasons. That's the way it works lately. But it's not always going to stay like that. The franchise, we've talked about the worth of the franchise going up, right? It's the value's going up. This team is going to be doing things very differently in the very near foreseeable future here. We know that they're going to get better. But, David, you want to jump in? The off-the-field stuff that an NFL franchise does for a city.
Look, I think, honestly, all those critics, they're not going – there's no way to get it in their head until they actually see it for themselves. There's really no way until they see just how much of an impact this team does. I mean, sure, I covered that RMHC story, and I've done other ones, Raiders in the community, but that doesn't speak as much volumes as once they're here, once they are the Las Vegas Raiders, and once they're more involved with the community. They're not going to, stop critiquing this team until they see it, and maybe they see how awesome of a thing it is. Because we, being from LA, I've seen it. This is what sports franchises do. They're so awesome, and they have such a great impact on the community. But there's really no way to see how big of an impact the NFL team does until 2020, until they get here.
Look at how much negativity there was with the Golden Knights when they first of all, bringing a franchise to Vegas that plays on ice, right? And it wasn't just the outside media. A lot of local fans were like, hockey? What are we going to do with hockey here? Nobody watches hockey here. So people got a little irritated about that right off the bat. And then you had the name. Remember, it was the Golden
Vegas.
Golden Knights, and they're calling them.
How could you leave loss off?
Yeah, there was so much hate. The logo is stupid. We hate the logo.
I was one of those people.
I'm sure you were. We're the Silver State. Why is it gold?
Silver
there was
Knights.
so much hatred right off the bat. Then what happened?
Yeah.
They started winning. Who talks about the colors anymore? Who talks about the name anymore? Nobody cares.
No.
If you're winning, then look how great
my wife
they've done
still
with the
doesn't
city.
like the gold on the jerseys. I think she's crazy. But also, by the way, how could they not think ice would work here? We have all the ice on the street, all the bars. You know how much ice we go through in this city? We're in the desert. We love ice. Are you kidding me?
It's just I don't understand why anybody. You don't have to be a Raiders fan. I'm lucky because I'm born and raised a Raiders fan. So, I mean, come on.
If you consider that lucky.
Well, I'm lucky in the sense that they're coming here, so that's kind of fun. But how can you hate on it? You're getting the NFL. You are getting the NFL in your city. Embrace it. It might not be your favorite team, but it is a team for the biggest sport in all of America. Embrace it. Have fun with it. Be excited that they're coming.
Oh, absolutely. Wow, that's the close of the show. We're closing out here. We got about a minute left. And during that minute, just a couple things. Again, we mentioned the Falcons and Redskins coming up next here. We'll be back with you next week. We'll preview the Chargers game. You're going to talk to Sam Fortier from The Athletic.
Yes.
We'll talk about that.
Bring him back on. Did a great job for us last time.
He did. That double-digit loss coming up against them.
The first of many.
And then also make sure you tune into the PGA. I want to thank David Stepanian, our engineer and correspondent, for his great story on Ronald McDonald House. Thank you for that. And for Macateras, I am Scocco Branson. Also want to thank our producer, Mark Bonilla, who is always nearby and always there helping us. Without him, we're not on the air. So thank you to him as well. And thank you to you, Raider Nation, all of you. Hang in there, and may the autumn wind always be at your back. We'll talk to you next week. This has been Silver and Black Today on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m.